Hello friends. We're starting to really get into the season now, and our painting today is anything but usual. Today I'll be painting along with The Joy of Painting featuring Bob Ross, Season 2, Episode 3, which is titled Ebony Sea. This painting will be on a black gessoed canvas, which has a layer of liquid crimson and blue on top. As we add paints, they'll interact with the pigments on the canvas already and create a sunset effect as viewed from the cliffs along the California or Oregon coast. The last time I painted waves, they turned out bad. And it's always a challenge painting on a black canvas, so this is bound to be an interesting painting. Please join me now, and subscribe if you haven't. Let's get painting. So before getting started on this painting, I did a lot of canvas prep. The first thing I did was to put a healthy layer of black gesso on the canvas and allow that to dry completely. Then I created a liquid alizarin crimson and a liquid phthalo blue and put those on the canvas right before starting to paint here. These colors are pretty much imperceivable in Bob's painting, at least in the video. So when I put mine on and they were this bright and vibrant, I was a little alarmed. You can see here I'm just kind of going in with my 1-inch brush and doing some crisscrosses up there in the sky. That's just some titanium white there. And you can see how it does pick up the colors underneath. Picks up that red and the blue up there. I kind of wish I'd gone a little higher up into the sky with my red. You'll see as the painting progresses that it kind of looks a little more like night than a sunset, but still not too bad. So as I said, putting some titanium white on there. That's one of the colors we're using. Phthalo blue, of course. Burnt umber. Van Dyke brown. Alizarin crimson, sap green, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, and permanent red. Going in now with my 2-inch brush, and that's just a dry brush with nothing on it, just blending those kind of color differentiation in the sky there. Smooth it out a little bit. Just create kind of a natural kind of cloudy backdrop. Just cleaning off that 2-inch brush now. Beat the devil out of it. Now back with my 1-inch brush, picking up some cadmium yellow and mixing that in with some titanium white, just trying to give it the slightest tint of yellow there. Just trying to kind of put in an indication of where that sun would be. Now I'm trying to be really careful because since I put yellow in with the white there, if that mixes with the blue, it's going to give a real kind of unnatural green glow into the sky. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of wish I'd gone a little higher with that alizarin crimson part there. But I just love phthalo blue, so I may have gotten a little carried away there. I'm getting my fan brush out there, having a little trouble with my earpiece. I'm getting some of that Van Dyke brown with a little crimson there. And just kind of mixing that together to make an earthy kind of a color that'll form the base color for some clouds. So I don't know why I said earthy. You'll see here in a bit that it's a lot of earthiness there. We use that color quite a bit in this painting. Now, as Bob was doing his painting, it was really difficult to follow him because putting a lot of dark colors on a dark background in this painting, kind of combined with the recording technology of the 1980s, made it really difficult to discern what's happening on the screen. So I kind of compensated for this a little bit by turning up the brightness all the way on my TV when I was watching and painting along, and also having a nice, decent printed color copy of the finished painting sitting there right next to the TV. I always recommend that you go and watch Bob do the painting, but definitely check this one out and see what I'm talking about. And just kind of putting some more clouds up in the sky there. Trying to, really move the brush around and fluff them up some. Get a real natural cloud look and shape to them. Fan brushes aren't as much fun to clean. You don't get to thwack them on the leg of the easel. Now making some highlight color for those clouds, just picking up some yellow and just a little bit of that permanent red. That color's just so strong. You can see how kind of scared of it I am even using it there. And it's important when you're putting highlights on things, whether it's clouds or trees or snow or whatever, you want to make sure you're paying attention to where your light source is coming from, and always have your highlights on that side of the object. So on those lower clouds, that means putting the highlights on the top, as well as this one here. But on those higher clouds, I'm going to put the highlights along the bottom. And if you don't do it that way, it kind of ruins the effect some. Just trying to add the littlest bit there. Give it a highlight without taking too much away from the darkness. This is just overall a dark painting, and so it's important not to add highlights that are just unnaturally bright and which don't fit in with the rest of the scene. Cleaning my brush off again there. I'm just wiping it on some towels that I have sitting on a shelf I've got there on the easel. Now this part always makes me nervous. I just spent all that time on those clouds, and now I get the 2-inch brush out again and just trying to soften everything up a little bit and fluff things up a little bit more, kind of add some more indications of wind up there blowing the clouds around. Yeah, just trying to make it look natural while also trying to, not wipe away all my highlights that I just added. I feel like it went pretty well on this painting. Now it's time for the knife to come on out and play. And All I'm getting here is just some titanium white with just a little bit of that cadmium yellow in it. Just trying to pull it out to a really little bit. This part made me really nervous. Just going to go in there starting directly underneath where the sun is so that that's where the paint is the brightest. And just really carefully trying to put in a perfectly horizontal horizon there. Having it wiggly is kind of okay because you're looking out over the ocean. You know, a little variation is to be expected. But, you know, all in all, you need to keep that thing really flat. And so I was really nervous about getting it here. And I fell behind Bob a little bit at this step. As I've mentioned before, when I watch Bob's videos and I'm painting along, I'm watching him at 75% speed because otherwise it's just too difficult to keep up with him. Now just adding in some waves off in the distance there that are catching the sunlight. Or in my case, moonlight. Just trying to blend everything really lightly and, you know, not lose the shapes, but also make it look cohesive. So our Bobism for this episode is always believe in yourself. Believe in your ability and what you can do. It's a short one, but I think it's something that we should all keep in mind. It's important to, you know, trust that you know yourself best and to just always do your best. I've got some more titanium white, but I picked up a little liquid white there too. And on Bob's painting, this is definitely the step I liked the best. Because, like I said, you couldn't see the blue and the red on his canvas before he starts putting down the white. And at this point, he just is pulling up these shades of blue and mixed red and stuff. And it's just so nice. Especially since the rest of this painting is somewhat dull. You can see I'm just kind of bending the bristles up a little bit there to make some splashes, some breakers. This is one area where I stand to improve quite a bit. You know, active moving water is a difficult thing to capture. And, you know, Bob's techniques are really good for this. It's just, you know, seeing it in my mind's eye as I'm doing it and getting the paint to do what I'm picturing. I'm just not quite there yet when it comes to the waves. Now, remember earlier when I was talking about this being an earthy tone? Well, now I'm actually going to use it to make some earth. Just picking up a little bit there on the end of the knife. And we're just going to put a rock right out there in the water. Yep, he just lives way out there. Getting some of that burnt sienna there and just the littlest bit of cadmium yellow. By adding yellow and red in with these browns, that's what really adds kind of the sun glistening effect. Or at least it should. You know, watching back on this episode, I was overmixing my colors on the palette. I feel like that took a lot of the interest out of some of the color mixes. You know, by having variations in the colors that are on the brush, it just naturally builds the variations into the painting. And you can see on this one I didn't achieve that as well as some of the other ones. I think part of that might be, especially once I start mixing the liquid white in with some of these colors, just because it's such a dark painting, any amount of white, as you can see, really pops on the canvas. And so if you don't get that liquid white mixed in really well, then it just it really kind of ruins the effect. You can see I'm just kind of trying to build some more rocks in there, have them coming a little bit closer to us where we're viewing the scene from. Go over mixing my colors. And I'm just kind of trying to drag this over the top of the base color, a little lighter highlight there. Which, to be completely honest, I was really nervous about how those rocks were going to go on, and I'm pretty happy with them so far. Now you can see I'm picking up some sap green and some cad yellow and alizarin crimson, mixing those together. And just kind of adding a little vegetation there to the top of those rocks. Bob has a term he uses, mud mixer, and that's when you've created a mess on the canvas. Your colors aren't differentiated. Things are smearing. Things are looking, messy. I definitely kind of felt like that for this painting, especially standing up close to it. I felt like the colors just weren't great, and I couldn't really see the picture as a whole until I stepped back. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out, but it's not one of my best. I've got my script liner out there, and I've picked up a little oil on there and mixed it with some Van Dyke brown to go in and put some trunks on these trees here. And the oil I use is linseed oil. I'm just trying to pick up a little the yellow ochre and some permanent red in it there to put some highlights on these treetops here, kind of show them catching the sun. And I was not really happy with how this was going on. It didn't seem like it was really looking right, and that's when I realized Bob had actually switched to the fan brush for those highlights. So mixed up a little more paint, and you can see just how much better the fan brush does at putting the highlights on those trees there. Not only did it put the paint on faster, but because of the way the bristles are aligned on the brush compared with a script liner where they're all kind of pulled out tight, it makes for a lot better leaf effect, especially for trees that are that far away. Trying to add some more life into our ocean there with some liquid white and titanium white mixed together. Probably a little bit of yellow in there, just the littlest, tiniest amount, which of course if you get yellow mixing with your blue here and get a green color, that's just fine because the ocean is green a lot of the time. And we're just going back in and going to put in a lot more rock base now. Going to put in the cliff here that we're standing on and just with the knife, just kind of taking that Van Dyke brown and just a little bit of burnt umber mixed in with it. And now over on the other side, cutting in a big cliff. Just trying to create a realistic kind of rock face there. And I'm needing to put down a lot of paint. And this is another step where I kind of got behind Bob. He can lay down paint really fast with that knife, and that's a skill I'm still working on. One thing I thought about with this painting is that this scene, this view, looking down off a cliff on America's kind of northwest coast there, it's a scene that I have little personal experience with. I think that kind of affects how I'm able to envision it in my mind and how I'm able to put things then onto the canvas. I really was relying on following along Bob on this one. I've seen mountains, I've seen forests and plenty of trees and clouds. But this is kind of a landscape that I've only experienced a couple of times in life. And I just feel like, when you have a little bit more personal experience with the subject of your painting, it makes it a little easier for you. Still, see, I'm just putting down that brown there. I'm trying to get that base in and get rid of as much of that blue as I can. Now I'm mixing in some burnt umber and alizarin crimson there to make a highlight color. And just kind of allowing that to break as I pull it down over the face of the rock there. Just trying to create a little bit more variation and show the areas where the sunlight is reflecting off the rock. Like I mentioned earlier, it's important to keep track of your light source and which direction the light's coming from as you put those highlights on things. And now I've got my 1-inch brush picked up there again. And I've got some liquid white on it, and I'm getting some just brown mix with both the brown colors there and some alizarin crimson, and just kind of mixing that up and going in here to add some trees. And Bob explained how the vegetation along this coast, just gets blasted by so much wind that the trees kind of flatten out and things are kind of scraggly. And so I tried to bring that through in my painting too. Put a nice big tree up there at the top. And it's important whenever, you're putting in these big trees that are in the foreground that you do take them, all the way to the top of the page or the top of the canvas. By taking it all the way up to the top of the canvas, you bring the viewer more into the painting, I feel like, and having a just open area up there, it really detracts from everything else. You can see I'm just trying to mix it up to really get rid of that liquid white, but at the same time, I'm losing a lot of my variation. Bob mentioned in this episode to just touch, don't smear. Touch it and get away from it. When you're putting these highlights on, that's important to kind of maintain the leaf shape and the individual points of color there. When you smear it, you just lose so much of the detail. Just trying to load the brush up there pretty good. You want to be careful there because you want to have enough paint to be able to, add some meaningful color to the painting, but you don't want to have so much that you're stuck smearing. Now with my fan brush, I'm picking up some burnt umber and Van Dyke brown mix and just pulling in some trunks for our trees. Trying to make them look like they've been kind of battling the elements out there and they're just doing their best. Widening it out there at the base, giving it a good foot to stand on there on the edge of the cliff. Make sure it doesn't fall off or get blown away. This is a good painting for practicing your tree trunks because they're just so big and exposed, and it's important to make them, make the curves on them smooth. Just adding a little highlight in there. Apologize for getting in the way of the camera here. As I do the painting, the further along I get in the painting, the closer I hold my face to the painting and kind of block the view from the back camera. Right now I'm kind of just pulling the paint across the tree trunk, trying to make a curved shape and add some three-dimensionality to the trees. I feel like mine did really well on this. The part of this that I'm happiest with is definitely the tree trunks. So like I mentioned in the last episode, I've got a email address where you can send comments that you don't want to put below for whatever reason. It's just becomingbob@gmail.com, and if you whatever reason want to reach out to me, feel free to. I thought this was kind of different on this painting. A lot of times when you're putting in this kind of vegetation, I feel like you use the 1-inch brush, especially because at this point I'm just kind of putting in the base background color for it. But it gives you a different effect when you use the fan brush, and I think that, that scraggly, more broken up effect is what Bob was looking for here, and I think it fits better. As I'm doing this, just trying to keep with the slope there of the land and maintain that slope and continue the slope and It's important to remember that as you do this, you are changing the slope. You have to be thoughtful about how you add vegetation, because when you add the tops of vegetation, which is really all you're adding here, you kind of imply where the bottom of that vegetation is and how the land is shaped. It's important to keep things clean. Try and avoid some of that mud mixing. Now we've got the 1-inch brush out and we're making some highlight colors. And he just kind of did these backwards from how he does them on some other ones, by doing the highlights with the 1-inch brush and the base color with the fan. It's also important to think about the two different parts of the vegetation when you add it, as being a part of a three-dimensional whole. So you put the shadow on, of course, along the bottom side, and trying to keep track of where those highlights are. But you don't necessarily have to have a corresponding highlight and shadow for each part of the plant. If it's a part towards the bottom, it's just going to be all shadow. If it's a part towards the top, it's just going to be all highlight. And so it's important to kind of have those spots differentiated to get a little bit more life and texture into your vegetation areas. Just trying to touch, get away from it. And also trying to make a variation. It's always important when putting on your highlights to try and vary it a little bit, because even though you might be putting in a bunch of plants that are all the same, all the same species of grass or shrub or whatever, every plant's different. The sun hits their leaves differently. Their colors are just a little bit different. Their shape is definitely a little different. So it's important to try and bring that into your paintings. Now, at this point, I'm looking at everything and I'm thinking, this looks pretty good, especially compared to how I thought things were going earlier on. But I can see there in my water, it just seems like it just stops. So at this point, Bob's doing some other detail stuff, but I felt like it was important to pick up a little bit more liquid white and titanium white on my fan brush there and just add a little bit more oceanness to my water. It just looked unnaturally flat, especially with how wild it is a little further out. I felt like this was important to kind of add that cohesion and bring it all the way up to the base of the cliffs. And now I'm getting some linseed oil and permanent red there on my script liner, which means it's time to put on my signature and finish the painting. So thanks again for watching. This has been Becoming Bob, Series 2, Episode 3, the painting Ebony Sea. If you've liked this episode, please leave a like. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. Every time I get a new subscriber, it's exciting. Being a small channel, sometimes the little things are just feel like big wins. Thanks for watching. Bye for now, friends.